If the New York Giants plan to have a good season this year, they need to start doing a lot more of this in each game. Locked On Giants starts right now.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all my written work. And as always, we welcome on in our Blue Crew community members, our everydayers, our newcomers, and everybody in between. And we thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And if you have made us your first listener today, we appreciate that. Today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by Mazda. Just like there's more to every player, more dedication, more attention to detail, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Stay tuned later in the episode for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. All right, Giant fans, on today's Locked On Giants podcast, we're going to take a look at something that the New York Giants haven't really done a whole lot of in regular season openers, but something that they not only have to do in regular season openers, but they should look to do every game. So we'll look at that. We'll look at some numbers about the item in question, and we'll talk about how that can help the Giants moving forward. And then in segment 2, we're going to take a look at Russell Wilson, and specifically, can he unlock the Giants' deep ball game, something that has really been missing from this offense for the longest time. So we'll take a look at that. And then in segment 3, we have some depth chart updates. The team released the unofficial depth chart, which means it didn't come from the coaches, it came from PR, but still some things that we'll probably want to touch upon and talk about. So that is what we have planned for you today on the Locked On Giants podcast. And again, thank you for joining us. All right, let's get into it. You know, when we talk to the players and the coaches, they like to say that the NFL season is a marathon, not a sprint, meaning that, you have room for peaks and valleys. But one area where the Giants just have been really bad at the last couple of regular season openers in particular, matter of fact, you can make the case the last couple of seasons, is the Giants take that approach when it comes to games. And by that, I mean they don't get off to a fast start. Now, from a big picture perspective, the Giants have started 0-2, and I believe 6 of their last 8 seasons. The 2 times that they haven't started 0-2, that they've gone 2-0, they have actually gone to the playoffs, those being in 2016 and 2022. But I want to talk more specifically about games. All right. You look at the New York Giants, the last 2 regular season openers, and they have been blown out. We know that. Okay. They were outscored 68-6, which is not very good. But here's the really eye-opening stat. All right. In that 68-6 scoring onslaught, the Giants only scored 3 points in the first half of both of those games. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know if there's any other way to get off to a fast start if you're going to, only score 3 points in the first half of your game. And the Giants, all too often, we saw it last year, we saw it the year before, the Giants just couldn't get off the ground running. They couldn't hit the ground running. They had so many opening drives where I think maybe they had 1 or 2 last year where they actually scored on the opening drive. And I'm not talking field goals. I'm talking you've got to score touchdowns. And the Giants just weren't able to do that. And I truly believe that's one of the main reasons why this team has struggled. And there's been many reasons why they have struggled. But in particular, that reason, not scoring right away. Now, here's what's interesting. Let's take a look at last year's scoring percentage. The Giants in the first quarter of games last year during the regular season outscored 92-36. All right. You're not going to win very many games if you're not scoring in that first quarter. Then in the second quarter, it got worse. They were outscored 127-86. Okay. So you do the math, folks. The Giants were getting blown out by halftime. The game, for all intents and purposes, was over at that point. And what did you get? You had a team, or a franchise worse, 3-14 record. So, yeah, this year, can't have that. The Giants have got to hit the ground running. And that goes without saying. The numbers back it up. I'd mentioned the bigger picture, and let me give you specifics, actually. Since 2017, the Giants owned to 6 times, so that includes 2017 through 2021 and last year's season, 2024. The 2 times, like I said, that they were 2-0, 2016 and 2022. Now, you're probably saying, look, let's worry about this week 1, and then worry about next week when it comes up. And you're right. But I mention that because it's all tied in to having a fast start. And, the topic was broached to Tyrone Tracy Jr. on Monday about the slow starts. And Tracy, kind of was, I don't want to say, myth by the question, but he basically said, look, what happened in the past happened in the past. Just like my college stats don't mean anything now. It's a new year, new team, and so forth. Okay, yeah, in a way he's right, but there's a lot of guys who were here last year on the team that got off to the slow start, and the year before that on the team that got off to the slow start. So, I see Tyrone Tracy's point, but my point is you have some guys who are on those teams that just couldn't get off the ground, and the team is also being coached by the same coaching staff. Now, here's why I have reason to hope that things will be a little bit better. If you go back and you look at the last 2 season openers, what did they have in common besides the fact the Giants lost and got their doors blown off? The Giants were coming off a preseason stint in which head coach Brian Daboll barely played the starters. And this is something, if you watch me every day or you read my stuff, I scream about this on a regular basis. All right. They almost treated week 1 and week 2 of the regular season as though it was preseason, an extension of preseason. And I never understood the reason behind that. All right. So this year, Brian Daboll bent a little bit. He played his starters in week 1. He played them in week 2. He sat them in week 3. Me personally, I would have flipped week 2 with week 3. Quite frankly, I would have played them a little bit in each week because this is not a Super Bowl team. This is not a perennial playoff team. All right. They, you can't make the excuse, well, Russell Wilson, he's our starter and he's been there, done that, so no problem. No. This was a brand new team with new players. They had to get the cadence down. They had to get used to playing with each other because you cannot simulate game speed in practice. So I was glad to see Brian Daboll did that. Now, my one concern, like I said, the Giants did not play their starters in the final preseason game. It has been almost, 3 weeks since that game? That's a kind of extended bye if you think about it. How are they going to be sharp? How sharp are they going to be against Washington? How's the stamina going to be? These are all things I think we need to look for on Sunday. All right, because if the Giants come out and suddenly they're dragging or they don't look sharp, that's going to be another issue that you're going to hear me scream about when I recap the game. All right, so hopefully that won't be the issue. All right, but we'll see because the slow starts in part are due to the head coach, I think, not preparing the team to hit the ground running. And my best guess as to why he's like that is because he's concerned about guys being banged up and giving, the priority is letting guys, rest and be ready to go and whatnot. And, I can appreciate that, but I also think that's kind of a bogus excuse because injuries are going to happen. Right. So, yeah, even if you let a guy totally heal up to where he's 100%, guess what? He's probably going to be sore after he goes out there week 1 and maybe even more sore than he would have been had he been playing all along and his body been getting used to getting smacked around after such a long layover. So if that's Dable's reasoning, I'm sorry, it's not a good one. And I just hope it doesn't come back to bite him again, because if it does, like I said, spoiler alert, you're going to hear me scream about it on Monday's show if the Giants lose. All right, coming up next, the Giants want to be more vertical on offense. Can Russell Wilson be the guy to do that? We'll take a look at why he can, or in this case, maybe why he can't. Don't go anywhere. This is Mazda's Moving the Game Forward, brought to you by those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. Because these moments do more than win. They push whatever is possible. They remind us to go that extra yard, shift into the extra gear, and keep moving the game forward. And with the New York Giants having unveiled their unofficial depth chart, which lists rookie quarterback Jaxson Dart as the backup behind starter Russell Wilson, it's looking more and more like Dart will soon be called upon to move the Giants' offense forward this season. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. There are some times when you just can't wait for days to get that part that you need for a project. Well, now you don't have to wait because Supply House has next day delivery. And their part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use our promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. Again, that's S like Sam, H like Harry, NFL, and the number 5. Supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. All right, Giant fans, before we get into our next segment, we have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcasts even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks so much for helping us out. All right, Giant fans, let's get right into segment 2. The big question: if the Giants really want to be a vertical offense this year, and I think they do, can Russell Wilson be the guy to lead them to that? Well, you would think so. You would think the moonball specialist would be the guy to connect on with some of these speedy receivers, get them downfield, get the ball in their hands, get big chunk plays. But there's one part of Russell Wilson's game that I think we have to talk about that could be the fly in the ointment. And that is a tendency to hold the ball a little too long. All right, so I went back and I looked at Russell Wilson's average time to throw since 2022. Okay, now since 2022, and this info, by the way, is per Pro Football Focus, Russell Wilson has averaged 2.98 seconds to throw. That's kind of a long period, okay? When you look at quarterbacks and average time to throw, ideally, You want them getting the ball out of their hands within 2.5 seconds or less. Now, some people might say, well, is that because he takes a deeper drop? Or, what could it be? I don't think that's the reason. I think it's just for whatever reason, Russell Wilson's a little bit more cautious with the ball. And as a result, he'll hold it a little bit longer. And to prove that, the trade-off for Russell Wilson holding the ball nearly 3 seconds has been just 26 interceptions and 1,367 dropbacks. All right. Those 26 interceptions, by the way, tied for 30th amongst 49 quarterbacks with at least 500 dropbacks in that time span, which again is 2022 to 2024. So Russell Wilson, who, by the way, in that same time span has had just 39 turnover-worthy plays and 71 big-time throws, which were considered a grade of 1.0 or higher by Pro Football Focus. Russell Wilson got to speed up getting that ball out of his hands, all right? And that is actually something that head coach Brian Daboll, quarterbacks coach Shea Tierney, offensive coordinator Mike Kafka, they worked with Russell Wilson on that this past offseason and summer, right? Because, Wilson, he could throw the deep ball like no one else, but he only throws it when he's got a guy who's like clearly wide open. And that you don't really see him throwing that deep ball when a receiver maybe is tightly covered. So there has to be a certain degree of risk taken, and that's what practice is for. That's what the Giants tried to do with him with practice by, having situations where maybe a receiver was covered tightly. And it's just something they need to keep building on with him, because this is pretty much what we have seen from Russell Wilson for the majority of his career. You can appreciate that he doesn't want to throw a turnover. You can appreciate that he wants to keep the ball out of harm's way. But look, I've said this before with the Giants. They've got guys who are speedsters. They've got guys who could break open the game and slice the top off of a defense. What good is it if the quarterback isn't going to get the ball out of his hands and to these guys? You look at what Russell Wilson was asked to do last year, mostly with the Pittsburgh Steelers. A lot of his throws were short or intermediate and let the receivers pick up yards after the catch. So I'm not saying that the Giants should have Russell Wilson throw deep on every single ball, because no team does that. I think there will be a mixture of, the shorter and intermediate routes mixed in with the deeper routes. But you'd like to see that ball come out of his hands quicker. And that's something I'm going to be watching or monitoring as we go through the upcoming season. How quickly is he getting the ball out of his hands? We went through this kind of with Daniel Jones last year and the year before that, and basically throughout his career, where Daniel Jones was just holding on to the ball. But that was more of a result of Daniel Jones not trusting what he saw. I don't think that is the case with Russell Wilson. I think with Russell Wilson, it's a matter of, I don't want to turn the ball over. I don't want to make a mistake. And to a degree, that's how Daniel was. He didn't want to make a mistake. It was drilled into his head. Don't turn the ball over. Don't make a mistake. If that's how Russell Wilson is operating, then I don't know, folks. Maybe, just maybe, we could see a quarterback change a lot sooner than later. I know the Giants don't want to go down that path. They would rather Russell Wilson stay healthy, win games, and stay as their starter. But, at some point, when are you going to unlock this offense and what it's capable of doing? You've got Malik Nabers, who is speedy and can take the top off the defense. Darius Slayton can do that. Wan'Dale Robinson can do that. If they get Jalen Hyatt up and running the way they need to, he can do it. So, do you really want the quarterback being the reason why you're held back from getting the deep ball? All right. So I'm going to be curious to see how that unfolds, because I think Russell Wilson, he's been working on that. I think he's going to be okay, but still, we'll keep track of that. And we'll see once we do, our year-end analysis, how everything played out. You would think that with Russell Wilson as the starting quarterback, seems to like it here in New York. Maybe he's thinking to himself, "Hey, I want to see if I could get another contract." I don't think he will, but Russell Wilson has been everywhere. It seems, the U.S. Open, just about everywhere. Socially speaking. So that doesn't mean he's going to be the future here, but one way he's definitely not going to be the future in this season is if he hangs on to that ball and misses out on opportunities to hit his receivers down the field. All right, Giant fans, coming up next, we're going to take a look at the Giants' unofficial depth chart, which was released on Tuesdays. Just some thoughts that I have, some of it which I covered yesterday, so I won't totally rehash them, but we'll take a look at what the Giants did and what it means going forward. That's right after this. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. The NFL season is here, and that means fantasy football season is also here. Everyone's researching, drafting, and building their championship squads. And if you haven't joined a league yet, now's the perfect time, and it's all happening on Yahoo Fantasy. Yahoo Fantasy is loaded with fun ways to compete and brand new features that make the game even better. Want more ways to play? Try the brand new Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine League mode, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated weekly until one team is left standing. Want to play instantly with friends? Try the new Draft with Friends mode. Prefer the classics? Get your crew together and go head-to-head in a private league. Don't have a crew? Hey, no problem. Join a public league, the easiest way to play. So don't wait. Start your league right now. Draft now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Again, that's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Hey, Giant fans, the NFL season is finally here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. Think the Giants might actually debut quarterback Jaxson Dart at some point this weekend against the Commanders? Hey, go ahead, play those odds. So go ahead and play those odds. Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. Again, that's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And in this segment, the New York Giants are out with their Week 1 unofficial depth chart. And I have to stress unofficial because it's not something that the coaches give to the PR staff to release to the media. It is the PR staff who puts that unofficial depth chart together, hence why it's called unofficial. All right. And they base it on the observations from the week prior, training camp snaps, game snaps, who played in what order. That's how they kind of base it. To be clear, it's not from the coaches. So that being said, there are some things, and a lot of times the unofficial depth chart actually matches the coach's depth chart. So let's talk about a couple quick things. First off, as I mentioned on yesterday's show, Greg Van Roten starting right guard. That was never really a competition. What did happen, though, Jaxson Dart was named quarterback 2 over Jameis Winston. Now, I found that interesting because that, to me, suggests that there could be a possibility, and I'm not saying this is going to happen because I haven't seen the injury report yet, but ideally, if you're a football team, it's rare that you can keep 3 quarterbacks that you have on your roster active. It's been done, but it's rare, all right? You have to look at the injury situation. The Giants are a team that it just seems every week they elevate somebody from the practice squad. Now, I don't know who they're going to elevate just yet because, again, I haven't seen the injury report. But if the plan is to elevate 2 guys, which is what the Giants generally do, then it makes sense to put Jaxson Dart ahead of Jameis Winston. Why? Because if you want to get him into the game in a mop-up role, you can now do that. Whereas if he's quarterback 3 and designated as the emergency quarterback, you cannot do that. All right. They're also, and I don't think that this is going to happen because you don't want to get into a situation where you have revolving quarterbacks. But could there be situations where maybe Jaxson Dart goes in there for certain situations, whether it be a specific personnel package or a pass that they want to throw or something like that? That's something you can't rule out. It's kind of fun to wonder about because the Giants in the offseason and even into the summer, Joe Shane, Brandon Brown, Brian Dable, they all were kind of like, we hope Jaxson Dart doesn't have to play this year. But they were all saying that before Jaxson Dart went out there in the preseason and looked pretty darn good. So had the Giants had a change of heart regarding Jaxson Dart? Possible. It's certainly possible. Or is it a matter of, okay, we know what we got with Jameis Winston, and if we need him to start because Russell's not available, we'll have him start. But, if we have an opportunity to get Jaxson Dart some mop-up snaps or some snaps here and there in the game, we're going to take advantage of that to continue moving him forward. That's what I think potentially is going to happen. All right. And I'm here for it. Jaxson Dart looked pretty good, like I said, in the preseason. Now you'll say, well, he played against backups. Yes, he did, but he also looked pretty darn good against those backups who, by the way, were trying to make their respective teams. So you can't dismiss that totally. And look, as I've said so many times before, Jaxson Dart is not going to learn sitting on the bench. You have to be out there in game speed. You have to witness stunts and all kinds of fancy, disguised coverages and exotic blitzes and all that stuff. Things that he maybe didn't see at the college level. That's the only way he's going to learn. So I am all for Jaxson Dart maybe getting into a game in a mop-up role or, here and there, and again, I'm kind of old school. I don't necessarily believe in rotating quarterbacks. And I hope the Giants don't do it to where it's Russell Wilson one series, Jaxson Dart the next. I mean, that would be just, I think, a disaster. But again, to see the kid here and there, I'd have no problem with that. So that's the big takeaway on the depth chart. And then just a couple of other real quick notes. As I suspected, no starting cornerback 2 was named. Cordell Flott and Deontay Banks, both of whom, if you remember, in the summertime are listed for that starting spot. Now there's a slash on the depth chart, meaning that they have not decided who is going to be the main man. And as I said on yesterday's show, I think you're going to see, if he is healthy, I think Banks is going to be the starter. You've got to see Banks because, look, you've got a decision to make on his rookie option after this year. You cannot put him on the bench for the entire year. Cordell Flott, on the other hand, he's in a contract year. So you've got to decide, okay, do you want him back? So this is going to be an interesting and ongoing battle between the two. And, the other question is Deontay Banks, who has missed the last couple of games with an undisclosed injury, is he going to be okay to go? That's something to keep an eye on. And again, we won't know that until we get the injury report tomorrow to see where he's at. Okay, one last quick point, and this is something I didn't really talk about. Kind of obvious here, though. Gunnar Olszewski is going to be the punt returner and kickoff returner. He obviously passed Ihmir Smith-Marsette, who's on the practice squad right now. Gunnar Olszewski came in after missing all last year with an injury, came in and reclaimed his job. So Gunnar's back in the saddle. So we're going to see how that all works out for the Giants. Special teams really needs to pick it up this year. Last year, a little inconsistent, too inconsistent for my taste. So, all right, Giant fans, that's going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. I want to thank you for spending part of your day with us here today, or if you made us your first listen of the day, that is appreciated. NFL Fantasy Draft season is here, so for your next listen, go find a Locked On Fantasy Football podcast with hosts Vinnie, Iyer, and Michelle Magdziuk. Listen every day to prep for your fantasy draft and become the most informed manager so that you can take home your league's trophy this season. Find Locked On Fantasy Football on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Giant fans, coming up tomorrow, Crossover Thursday, David Harrison of Locked On Commanders and myself will get you ready for Sunday's regular season opener. Also coming up on Thursday, the debut of the Giants Squad Show. That is going to air 1 o'clock right here on the Locked On Giants YouTube channel. We'll also have the replay for you on the audio platforms. So that's going to be hosted by Jay Berman, and I will be on the panel, as will former Giants cornerback Mark Collins. So if you're available, stop on by. It's a live chat. You can participate with us. We'll see your comments, and we'll do everything we can to get you ready for the big Week 1 Giants season opener. All right, Giant fans, on that note, have a great one, and I'll see you tomorrow.